The witching hour has come and gone. We're pleased this evening to have Port Colborne High School Orchestra under the accompaniment of Derek Stickney, who is the music department head. Mr. Stickney, would you continue? We're going to have our national anthem played by the band. Please stand, everyone. Derek, I just have some Port Colborne pins for the band.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Many thanks to Port Colborne High School Orchestra and for performing our national anthem tonight. That's very nice. We appreciate that very much.
Yes.
We're calling the meeting to order officially. Are there any addendum items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Confirmation of the agenda. Would I have a mover and a seconder? Mover by Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Doucette. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Disclosures of interest? There being none? Need to determine the items of interest requiring separate discussion. Could I start perhaps with Mr. Bodner? None? Mr. Dant? Mr. Doucette? Oh.
Number 8.
Number 8. Mr. Main? Ms. Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to lift number 1, number 2, and number 7, please.
2, 7, and 1. Councillor Demery? No? Councillor Elliott? Is that no, sir? Okay. And then could I have a motion to approve the committee items not requiring separate discussion? Moved by Councillor Demery and Councillor Butters. All those in favor? Carried. Presentations this evening, we don't have any. We have several delegations. I would ask Brownall, Debbie Demu to come forward. of the first Port Colborne brownie pack. The brownie. Yes, there's a mic there if you could turn it on.
Push the red button. They're excited.
Mayor Maloney, councillors. The first Port Colborne Brownies have come to council tonight to show that Girl Guides of Canada is an active organization within our community. We are pleased to have girls ranging in age from 5 to 17 years of age in all levels of guiding: Sparks, Brownies, Guides, Pathfinders, and Rangers. These young ladies are the future leaders. February is a special month in guiding. We celebrate the birthdays of our founders, Lord and Lady Baden-Powell, on February 22nd, Thinking Day. Throughout February, we focus on teaching the girls about guiding around the world, the differences and similarities of their sisters in guiding. To have guiding recognized in our community would be an honor. We would like to ask Council to allow our guiding flag to fly from City Hall's flagpole for the month of February.
Mayor Maloney and council members, the
Donnie.
Port Colborne Brownie Unit
Just a
would
minute.
like to present the city of Port Colborne with the Girl Guides of Canada flag. Thank you for this opportunity.
May I present all of you with and the brownies in the audience too, with the City of Port Colborne flag. Perhaps I can give it to Brown Owl, who will make sure they get the right folks. Thank you very, very much for coming and presenting us that flag, and we'll see that it gets on our flagpole.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. I notice also that we have the regional chair with us, Mr. Alan Caslin. Thank you for coming. And also we have some regional, the CAO, Mr. Harry Slang, and also Mr. Seguin, the Economic Development Officer. Thank you very much for attending. We'll hear from you a little later. Now I would like to call upon the Lions. Catherine Cloak, come forward. Claudia Brema, representing the Port Colborne Lioness Club. Red button. There, good.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Maloney, councillors, city staff, and fellow guests. My name is Catherine Cloak, and I'm here on behalf of the Port Colborne Lioness Club. Thank you for accepting our request to have a few minutes of your time so that we can share with you who we are as a club, what we do to raise funds, and how we give back to the community. First of all, I'm happy to say that we have the highest membership in the A2 district, which covers areas of the Niagara region all the way down to Tillsonburg. Our club was established in 1983, and we currently have over 40 members. Some of whom are still founding members, and many who have already given years and decades of service. I joined just a few short years ago because I was looking for a way to play a more productive role in the community. Not quite knowing what to expect, I was quickly brought on board thanks to our lively and active members who took me under their wings, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. Each year we run our banner fundraising events such as Breakfast with Santa, where we flip and serve up about 1,000 pancakes and we hope to bring joy to many children as they get their picture taken with Santa. We also play a role in the Lions Carnival, working at the raffle booths, and other events include garage sales, bazaars, high teas, bingos, and fashion shows. The funds that we raise go to various local organizations, charities, and schools. For example, so far this year, we donated to a theater project at Oakwood School, and we generously donated personal items and toiletries to a local women's shelter. There are some regional agencies as well that we support, such as the Canadian Guide Dogs, Camp Dorset for kidney dialysis patients, and the Education Fund of Niagara, just to name a few. On top of providing monetary support to those in need, we also give our time. Our members bake cookies for Meals on Wheels. We work at the gates during the Grand Old Christmas at the museum, and we support Santa's helpers by handing out gifts. We also make sure to have lots of fun. For the past 2 years, we've participated in the Santa Claus Parade with a festively decorated classic car, and we dressed up as elves and handed out candy. For the remainder of the 2014-2015 year, we're planning a few more key fundraising projects, such as a spring bazaar featuring crafts, food, and wellness products. And I'm excited to announce a new project for us this year, Surprise Your Sweetheart, a Valentine's candygram that will run the month of February. We're taking orders for boxes of handmade artisanal chocolates that we will personally deliver. The cost is $10 for a mouth-watering array of choices such as honey almond, pecan toffee, butter me up truffle, and salted caramel. How does that sound? So thank you again for your time. We have some samples that we wanted to leave with you, as well as some information about the fundraising event, Surprise Your Sweetheart. And at this time, we'd also be happy to take any questions that you may have about the Port Colborne Lioness Club.
Members of council, any questions? Your reputation certainly precedes you. The Lions Club has been involved in this community for decades, and the Lionesses followed perhaps soon after. And I venture to say you're probably more active than the guys. You do an awful lot of good work in the community. Don't tell the guys I said that.
Off the record.
But you've been very, very active, and you're a wonderful service club to have in the community. We thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perhaps I'd just give a brief mayor's report at this time. We have started our budget deliberations, which will go on for some time until we finalize it at hopefully a very reasonable tax increase. We also have started the strategic planning, which will take us some time as well, but perhaps not as long as Mr. Heil will allow us. We want to have a program for next 4 years, but well into the future after that. And we had a great start on that on Saturday, and I thank all our senior staff for being with us and help us to facilitate this. Mr. Heil was the facilitator, and he did a very good job. United Way will be starting their campaign. Once again, the goal this year is approximately $650,000, which that's Port Colborne and Welland and the whole area, but that's a tremendous amount of money. We would certainly encourage members of staff, members of council, and the Port Colborne public to participate in this campaign. The United Way do a wonderful job with the money that they receive, but certainly they've fallen short in the last couple of years, and we'd like to see that deficit erased, certainly for the betterment of all our citizens in the region. I attended a meeting of the Highway H2O, that Highway group. They had a wonderful year in 2014, and didn't start out very quickly because of the ice problems that we had in Lake Erie here, but they ended up one of the best years they've ever had, and hopefully 2015 will be the same. I also, at the same day, attended a meeting of the Maritime Chamber of Commerce, and it was very interesting to see what other communities are doing around the Great Lakes. I'll conclude my report. I wonder, Councillor David Barrick, do you have a report you'd like to give us this evening? Bring Mr. Caslin with you. Come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to defer to the report that's in the council package, item number 2, that speaks to the economic development action plan that we've been working on at the region. And certainly, Mr. Mayor, yourself, also as a regional councillor, have had a hand in that as well. But also, this brief portion of my regional councilor's report, I also want to take the opportunity to welcome our newly elected regional chair, Mr. Alan Caslin. It's his first time, I think, in an official capacity coming to Port Colborne as chair role. And in the spirit of communication and transparency and recognizing, one, not only that we have an economic action plan, and two, the chair and the CAO here as well, that Port Colborne is definitely on the radar when it comes to prioritizing needs within the region, and in particular, economic development needs as well. So I just wanted to, one, state that I will be deferring to staff, but also welcome Chair Caslin to say a few words if he chooses, just to introduce him to Port Colborne City Council. And so for the next 4 years, I'm sure we'll have a great relationship with the region moving forward.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mayor Maloney. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to give you a little bit of an insight into what we're thinking in terms of economic development at the regional level. That's one aspect of what we've been working on recently, and as these two gentlemen know, we've been working on our strategic plan, which is something that's going to be very important to us, the council, over the next 4 years in the direction that we want to take Niagara. We're talking about transportation, infrastructure, taxation, a whole host of directional strategic issues that we want to address so that staff can take these directions and fill in the gaps beneath them and make our situation reality. As you all know, employment is one of the things that is a major driver for us over the next 4 years. Employment and also transportation. We have some lofty goals in terms of what we want to get done in terms of transportation, including getting GO Transit daily service to the Niagara area, our inter-municipal transit system, and we could talk about an airport too. But there's a lot on the agenda, and I think you're going to find what Bob Segan is going to say tonight very interesting. And stay tuned because we're taking some bold steps.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaplan. We very much.
Feel free to come back anytime. We appreciate your presence and wise guidance of the council at the regional level. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks again.
The final comment was bring money. We'll hold you to that. Okay. Are there any items of new business or council to come forward with? Yvonne Doucette, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And just a reminder to everyone, February 3rd, the Outreach Center on Nickel Street, we're having a pancake day. It's a fundraiser for them, and we hope to have as many people as we can come to that area, and so that we can you can partake of some pancakes, and we can make a little bit of money to help the individuals in that area. So February 3rd, 11 to 1, I'll see you all there, and hopefully I'll be flipping pancakes. That's what I'm told.
Thank you, Councillor Doucette. Any other comments, questions of council? Are there any staff responses? Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Mayor, yes, response to some of the inquiries we've had about the roof at the Valet Center. I have a couple just brief, I'm going to do it verbally, just a couple brief reports that have been done, just to bring council up to date. Some of the reports are fairly technical, but I just want to show council what we found to date, what our independent roofing consultant has found in terms of the leakage we're seeing, and a recent update from last week from our actual roofing contractor. So I'm going to pull these up. I'm going to sit so I can read this properly. The first report is a report that was done in December with regards to the roof. I'm just going to highlight a couple points on the report. Generally, I'm going to show you a photo and a diagram of this gutter that we suspect is the culprit in terms of the leakage we're seeing. There's a gutter that runs north-south along the grid line. It's about 160 feet long. There's a standing seam metal roof with multiple slopes on it. This particular gutter drains about 40,000 square feet of the 140,000 square foot roof. So I'm just going to go to these, just bear with me, I'm going to go down to these diagrams first to give you an indication. Get this to come up. It's a little slow generating. It's not coming up. Okay. I think we have some memory problems with this computer. Unfortunately, the graphics, I tried them this afternoon, but they're not coming up at the present time. Could be because there's some others up. Anyway, all right, I'll have to, this is a cross-section of the gutter that's on the roof. This slope, if I can just illustrate it, I guess, slopes about 40,000 square feet of the entire roof. And it's over this section of the roof, which isn't shown up graphically. It's in this area right here. If you can picture where the entrance is, where the main entrance to the facility is, and there's a gutter across here that's about 160 feet long. And we suspect from the original report from our roofing consultant that that's the culprit in terms of drainage. And there's some photos in here. I really have to apologize. The graphics aren't coming up here, and they were up this afternoon. It must be related to the amount of, there's some nice photos. Nothing showing up with the text, I apologize. So, okay. We had a report done just last week, January 23rd. This is from our roofing contractor. As a result of the independent analysis we had done in December, we pushed this on to our general contractor and to the subcontractor who did the roofing. And what they've found is that we've asked them to analyze the recommendations in that report that I just showed you. And they were up on the roof last week. And what they've found is some of the conclusions in here is that at the present time, as I suggested to you last week, the current gutters are full of ice and snow. There's heat trace cables in there that are melting some of the ice that are in the gutter and causing some of the leakage. But we haven't been able to, from the recommendation on the original report, we haven't been able to perform the water test in the gutter to confirm where the actual leaks are. Our contractor was up last week, and he said from this visit and all the areas that were checked, I regret to inform that still I am unable to observe any new areas or find any other areas that stood out to me as potential water entry points. So we have this 140,000 square foot roof. We have some suspicions on where the leakage is, but with the weather the way it is now in these minus temperatures, with the ice that's formed in all the gutters, we're not able to pinpoint the actual leaks. So I just want to let council know that we are moving ahead. There's a water test proposed for this interior gutter section that's on the report, and once the temperatures are consistently above 0 degrees Celsius, we'll be able to get the ice out of there and actually perform these tests. So I apologize again for the actual graphics not coming up, and there's a nice graphic, and what I'll do is actually send this to members of council. They can look at this on their iPads and have a better look at what these photos indicate in terms of this gutter and some of the deficiencies in it. And I just want to assure council that the contractor and the general contractor are moving ahead with these repairs and hoping to get this done as soon as the weather cooperates. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Hanson this evening? Councilor Rousette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. I appreciate everything that you're doing. And by the way, I understand that staff, yourself, as well as all the other staff that are working, we're all frustrated with this, and I believe even the contractor is frustrated with it. But the faster we can get it fixed, the better. And I believe that's where you guys are working at. And everyone out there understands you can't go on the roof at this time of year. And anyone that has spoken to me now definitely is indicating that it won't be fixed until the weather breaks and until some kind of melting goes on before we can find out exactly where it's coming from. But I appreciate the fact that you are working as hard as you are trying to get it done, and I think everyone out there will also appreciate it as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Henson.
And Councillor May. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ron. Ron, I appreciate that. We had to get an independent roofer to point out to the person who was a subcontractor for the roof to point out his mistakes, really, right? Now, he said he can fix that when the weather gets warmer, so now we're talking spring. My question to you is, was he ever asked to come and take a look? Because now all of a sudden he recognizes, yes, that could be the culprit, because you had to get an independent roofing contractor in to point out the error. So my question back to you would be, was that original roofing contractor called in and said everything was okay and nothing to worry about, and we still are getting leaks and getting complaints from taxpayers? Thanks.
Through Mr. Mayor, yeah, the answer to that is yes. Since the facility has opened, there's been issues with the roof and some of the leakage. He has been aware of that. He's been up on the roof many times. We've tried to work with him. We got to the point, as I indicated before, that we weren't satisfied with the progress we were seeing with our general contractor and with his subcontractor doing the roofing. We decided, because of this lack of action in terms of pinpointing where these leaks are, to get an independent analysis, and I think it's the best thing we've done in getting this very low price independent analysis to try to pinpoint, in fact, where these leaks are. Now, the next step, and we haven't went to the point where we're considering bringing that contractor or another contractor in to actually do the repairs. We're working with the contractor at no cost to the city, obviously. We want to see this repaired under the warranty, and we don't want to have somebody else go up and do the repairs and somehow negate that warranty. So I appreciate everybody's concern. I really appreciate our tenants' consideration in putting up with this and having to put buckets out at times when the water's coming in. So we really appreciate the cooperation we're getting from our tenants and from the public. So they are aware of it. This is a warranty issue that they have to address. We're trapped now because of the weather. So this will be addressed. We will get this fixed, and it'll be at no cost to the city when it does get finished. So that's what we're working towards.
I just wanted to make sure that they were going to be held accountable. So that is great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Maine.
Leaks, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hanson. Leaks are the hardest thing to find on a roof. Myself, I had a leaky roof and it went through 3 contractors before the roof got repaired. And I think you're going about it the right way by going back to number 1. I didn't do that. I ended up putting another roof on, which was a lot of money. And this sounds like it might save the town some money. The second question is, if it is the gutter, do you foresee them having to lift that part of the roof up to repair that gutter, to put bigger dampers in it, or?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Maine. We're not 100% sure. Because of the analysis and the difficulty, as you pointed out, in finding the leaks, there's a suspicion that the gutter is the culprit in terms of this. There's a good chance, depending on the water test that's done in warmer weather, there's a good chance this is the culprit, and there's a good chance also that this gutter would have to be completely removed, the membrane replaced, and the gutter put back in. There's at least 6 or 8 drains within the gutter. Unfortunately, I wish I could show this to you, but we can't show it. There's drains within the gutter that could be part of the problem. So we have to replace the membrane, replace the gutter. You'll see in the photos when I send those to you, there's a heat trace wire. All the gutters across the roof have heat trace wires. And what we found, another problem that we found, was the heat trace wires weren't sufficient to melt the ice at full all the time in the gutters. We're going to have to bolster those. They're installed the way they were designed, but what we're finding is they're not doing the job. the other fault with the heat trace wires, without getting all the details of it, was that there was no indicator on the panels themselves. If a heat trace wire failed within the gutter, there was no indicator that it wasn't working. So we need to put alarms in the panels that will indicate the heat trace isn't working in this particular run, and then we have to go and do a repair on it. So there's a number of issues also. It's very important that the ice and snow in the gutters be melted so that the water continues to run off properly. So another issue that we're dealing with the roof.
Thank you very much.
There being no further questions, I'd like to call just maybe a 2-minute recess to allow, if she wishes, Brown Owl to take her charges home to bed, or to homework, whatever. Thank you for the brief interruption. Are there any other members of staff who have a response to other councillor issues? Yes, sir.
Your Worship, quick update on the strategic plan. The intention is to have a report produced for February the 9th that summarizes everything that you did. On the 2nd, the intention will be to set out the next steps, plan the meetings, and the schedules to get this finished. All the staff, we will be reviewing it at directors on Monday, and we'll be bringing back the report to try to move this along. Secondly, Your Worship, in respect to the budget, now that's been done, I know there are some issues coming out of the strategic plan that you will want to consider in respect of the details in the budget. However, I will be asking you tonight, and I'm sure Mr. Sinnes will, to set some schedules about when you want to meet, rather to get those on the paper. There is also another issue that you agreed to on Saturday, and that is a special storm drainage meeting to review just the storm drainage issues in the city of Port Colborne. We need to establish that date also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Heil. The people that made their presentations on Saturday, will that also be included in the report, including the emails that were sent out and so on and so forth?
Through Your Worship, the intention is to take all of the submissions. There were 2 written, not presented, but 2 written that were received. My intention is to summarize all of the submissions and put them in and include them with the report. So it will be as complete as we can possibly make it.
The adoption of the minutes, the first meeting regular of the Committee of the Whole, dated January 12th, 2015. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Yes. Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Dennery, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The items that council has designated for further consideration are requiring separate discussion are items number 1, 2, 7, and 8. Perhaps at this time we could deal with item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division Report number 2015-15, subject information report, site servicing of East Side Employment Lands progress update. Will be a presentation from AECOM. They'll be doing that presentation for this above report on page 11. And let's see, the recommendation is that the Council of the City of Port Colborne receive Engineering and Operations Report 20-15, information report, site servicing of East Side Employment Lands progress update, and that staff continue to provide council with project updates as needed.
Mr. Mayor, if I could at this point in time, I'd like to introduce Ian Izzard from AECOM, our consultant on the project, and Ian's going to do a presentation on the status of the project at the current time, and then after Ian's presentation, Jim and I can answer any questions from council regarding the presentation.
There we go. Is that working? Thank you very much, and good evening, Your Worship, members of council and members of staff. Our intention tonight is just to give you an update on the progress of the design for the East Side Employment Lands. We will be reviewing the the background and the study information, the purpose of the study, the overview of the environmental assessment process, a summary of what's called the problem opportunity statement, and then I'll get into some of the engineering design, the water main, the wastewater system, the storm sewer, the road improvements, and the pump stations as designed in our preliminary design to date. So just to give you...
Could I just interrupt before you go further?
Certainly.
We would need a seconder for Councillor Butter's motion. That's Councillor Desmarais. Carried. Thank you. Go ahead. I apologize for interrupting.
Sure. So just to give you an overview, whoops, this is not working.
Very sensitive.
A very sensitive mouse. Can I use the mouse to point? I can. Wonderful. Okay, so the area in question is bound by Highway 140 on the east, Welland Canal on the west, 3rd Concession Road to the north, and 2nd Concession Road to the south. And this is designated as the future employment lands. Now you'll see that the area here is colored in four different colors, where we have in green the land that's owned by the City of Port Colborne, and that's approximately 25% of the available land in this area. We have in blue, I've lost my mouse, we have in blue is the land that's privately owned, and that's approximately 33% of the land mass. In yellow is the land owned by the Ministry of Transportation. They're currently using that as one of their depots, and they have mentioned to the city at one point that they may be interested in expanding that operation if at one point the municipal services, water and sewer, are available to them. And finally, in orange, we have land which is owned by the St. Lawrence Seaway. And the Seaway Authority has told us that this land is currently not designated as surplus land, therefore it's not available for sale. So as part of the environmental assessment study, the project involves the design of municipal services, including the stormwater, sanitary sewer, water main, and the roadwork. There we go. Now, as part of the environmental assessment process, no, I still can't point. Okay, I give up. As part of the environmental assessment process, we have gone through what's called the problem opportunity statement. We've done our background review, identified the study problems and opportunities, and we are starting through the preliminary investigation. So to give you an overview of some of that, the problem opportunity statement is as follows. The east side employment lands have been identified as a gateway economic zone and priority for investment. As a problem, the existing road network is deficient to service the planned growth and meet the needs of the development, and municipal services are simply non-existent throughout this area. So in order to address the above, we want to provide the necessary overall municipal servicing guidelines for the employment lands and provide input to formulate the city's capital works program. Now, in terms of engineering design, again with this aerial map, you'll see where we're proposing the water main to be installed. If I may, at the south end, the water main would be connected to the existing regional main on Highway 140, and this would allow water to flow to water main would dead end at the north end of Ramey Road on 3rd Concession. However, this existing regional main by itself doesn't have the required capacity to provide firefighting flows for the proposed industrial park. So we would actually need a second connection to the regional network, and that would be crossing the canal. This second connection from the west end, from Elm Street and Barrack, would be designed and built by the region at their cost, not the cost of Port Colborne taxpayers. Ooh, my mouse is moving around on me. Ah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I seem to have lost the mouse control on this side. In terms of the sanitary sewer network, what we've designed is a gravity sewer which would run along 3rd Concession, down Ramey Road, and as well up Ramey Road to a proposed pump station. And I'll get back to the pump station in a moment, but just to understand the needs of the pump station, if I may. The proposed outlet for the sanitary sewage is in the short term on Chippewa Creek Road. And for those who are unfamiliar with the area, there's a bit of an uphill slope here. As we all know, sewage runs downhill. In order to run the sewage uphill, I heard that, we need a pump station to pump the sewage up to the Chippewa Creek outlet. Now, the existing system through Chippewa Creek and down around through a number of pump stations to the treatment plant has a limited capacity for additional flow. So this will work for the initial developments, but as the East Side employment lands develop further, we would go beyond the capacity of all of these pump stations. And what we're proposing, thank you, is a canal crossing for the sewage force main, and this would convey the flows. This would replace the Chippewa Creek outlet and carry the flow across the canal to the Seaway water treatment plant. Also see in this diagram, dashed in yellow, is the proposed future sanitary sewer, and this would service the lands on the east side of the railway. And the reason we had to at least come to a preliminary design for that part of the sewage system was to ensure that we had enough capacity, but also to ensure that our pump station is deep enough to carry the water as it comes in through that network. There we go. In terms of road improvements, we're planning on developing Ramey Road from the south, from the railway tracks, with a truck turnaround at the south end. That would run north to 3rd Concession. We would run along 3rd Concession to Highway 140, and then there would be an improvement on Highway 140 as well. The improvements proposed on Highway 140 is to add a left turn lane. What we found through our traffic studies is that with the traffic that we're expecting to turn into the employment lands, that a dedicated left turn lane would be required, and that would simply allow traffic to continue moving north on Highway 140 while the stack of cars is waiting to turn left. And I'll get into a little more detail of the road design in just a moment. Give you, whoops, you're going backwards on me. There we go. Give you some detail on the sewage pump station. The pump station, of course, as I mentioned, we have the gravity sewer, which will convey sewage into the pump station. We'll go through a wet well and a dry well system. The dry well area would house the motors for the pumps, and that would flow out with the sewage through the force main, and the force main is the pressurized part of the system. As part of that same process, or that same area, we would have locations for the generator, an externally mounted generator, and a section as well for an externally mounted control and power panels. The electrical panels would be set up in what the region calls a sort of a bus shelter. If you can imagine a three-sided bus shelter with one open wall, that would allow for the electrical panels and the control panels, all in waterproof casings, to be installed, to be set up in such a way that maintenance could be done still outside, but at least in a covered area. So you're not exposed to the worst of the weather when you're going through there. Of course, there would be a parking area for the employees, and the whole area would be fenced in order to reduce vandalism. Something of note is if you notice this purple line, which does a bit of a zigzag on the left side of the pump station, this is the property line going up Ramey Road. The right-of-way on Ramey Road is about 20 meters wide through the southern portion, and at a point north of the JBL hydro crossing, the right-of-way widens to 30 meters. So there's an extra 10 meters in road width, in road allowance width. So we wanted to take advantage of that, put the pump station there, reduce as much as possible the amount of land needed to build the rest of that pump station. The fortunate thing is that the rest of this property outside of the road allowance is currently owned by the City of Port Colborne, so you'd simply be purchasing property from yourselves. This would, and again, this would be land for the pump station. I mentioned I'd get into a little more detail on the road network. On 3rd Concession Road, we're planning just a simple 2-lane, 2-way installation, 1 lane in either direction, 3.7 meters wide, which is a fairly standard industrial size roadway. You notice we have curbs on either side of the road, and that's slightly different than a typical rural cross section where you simply have roadway ends with a shoulder and ditches. Now, we've had to add curbs in there because of the proximity of some of the obstacles. You'll see that there's hydro pole very close on the left side, and the Hahn drain is very close to the road on the right side. So what we do in residential 50-kilometer-an-hour roadways is we can put in the curbs, and that helps us to protect the vehicles from impacting with those obstacles. It's a great trick on residential. It doesn't work so well in highways, but we can use it on this, which is a 50-kilometer-an-hour roadway. We plan to drain the subbase into the existing Hahn drain, and that allows us to keep a fairly shallow ditch on the north side of the road. On Ramey Road, we've proposed something slightly different where we're coming up with a 3-lane cross-section. The center 2-way left turn lane will simply allow traffic to turn into their proposed place of business as required, and still allow traffic to move north-south. Again, we're using a slightly modified shallow ditch, deep ditch setup. Again, draining the subbase over to one side, over to the west side of the road, allowing for a shallow ditch on the east side of the road, and then on the west side, that ditch would drain into the existing Ramey Road municipal drain. So we're going to use that to our advantage as well. Again, we've got curbs on both sides of the road, and again, that's an issue of proximity to the existing hydro poles, and there's hydro line, unfortunately, on both sides of the road. So we're a little bit constrained, but we've managed to contain that constraint by using curbs. So in terms of schedule moving forwards, of course, we'll start off with today is our presentation to Council. Coming up in the month of February, we do plan to have a technical advisory committee where we would invite the authorities such as Ministry of Transportation, Conservation Authority, Ministry of the Environment, etc. We would also invite the utilities to come to the meeting and review our plans with us and help us with any upgrades or updates that they would like done as part of this project. In the month of March, we're planning to have a public information center where the public would be invited to review the plans and drawings, and again bring up any concerns that they may have. Following these two events, we'll review the concerns that have been brought up, review our design, and come up with what we consider to be the optimal design for these lands, and bring that forward towards the completion of the project. We plan to have a second technical advisory committee meeting to review the proposed design with the different agencies and utilities and ensure that they're on board with the plans. And after that, we'll propose the completion of the environmental assessment. Now, with the completion of the environmental assessment, that document is open to the public for a period of 30 days, and during that time, the public will have a chance to review the document and to bring up any concerns that they may have. If the public does have any concerns, that will be brought forwards through city staff to us. We'll have the opportunity to address those concerns, review those concerns with the proponent, and resolve those concerns to their satisfaction. If we're unable to resolve those complaints to their satisfaction, then typically that goes into what's called a secondary review or a bump up, where those plans get reviewed by the Ministry of the Environment and eventually settled by the Minister himself, who will either tell the proponent that, sorry, the city has followed all the right process, and thanks for your concern, but we're going to continue on as we are. Or the ministry has the authority to tell us this proponent has a valid concern, we should go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and revise our design per their request. So these are some of the things that may happen. Well, some of the things that may happen. Following the completion of the design and the review of any secondary requests, we'll close the project, or close the environmental assessment, I should say, and then we'll move forwards into the detailed design. And the detailed design we plan to work on through the summer months to bring to completion in around the month of October. At that point, we should have a completed detailed design and tender documents to the city for tender and eventual construction at the appropriate time. And
questions? Councillor Harris, number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, through you to the presenter. You did mention that Port Colborne owns now 25% of the lands in the study area.
That's correct.
And the private ownership is 33% of those lands?
That's correct.
Okay, can you tell me the percentage of the MTO lands and then of the Seaway lands, please?
The MTO has 17% of the property, and the Seaway owns 25% of the property.
25%, and those lands are not going to be declared surplus in any way. They're going to be, the ownership will be maintained?
That's our understanding.
All right, thank you.
Further questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the presenter. With regards to the water servicing, did you say that the proposed regional water main crossing the canal is after the servicing has taken place to add extra water to the line, or is that in conjunction with the original build-out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could speak to that. We've met with regional staff. Currently, the water main crossing, trunk water main crossing, is in the design capital budget for the region for 2017. So we're looking towards a potential 2018 construction. This will not proceed without that water main being available. We have the option of extending, as a city, working with the region to extend the existing trunk water main on Highway 140 north and westerly along Second Concession to potentially service a portion of the lands, what we might call a phase one if we had a potential buyer, but to, as Ian has indicated in his presentation, to service. We need the water main crossing back to Barrick and Elm to provide sufficient water flows for the entire development.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Ron. I just lost it. Second question was with the wastewater side, with the existing pump station that's in place, what is the future capacity of that, and how soon after servicing the land, and if any building takes place, how soon do we reach capacity where the new pump station has to come into play?
The current outlet on Chippewa Creek Road has a capacity of up to 26 liters per second. What we're looking at for the entire process is a pump station capacity of 72 liters per second. So that's about a third of the total area.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is in regards to the 25% of the land that the St. Lawrence Seaway owns. I want to know, and maybe you can't answer this, but maybe someone from staff can, but how much of a major hurdle is that going to be in terms of developing this land when that's a fair chunk not to be available? And my second question maybe is for you. I just wondered, there was some mention in the report about private landowners have been sent out letters, and I wonder what the response was so far.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Butters, I could answer the first question. The lands are in fact owned by Transport Canada. They're under management of the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority. We've actually had conversations today where Economic Development Officer reached out to St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation and talked to their leasing manager, property manager, and they indicated that they're looking at potential land uses and actual use of that land and an opportunity for potential leasing of those lands.
Okay, good, thank you. And private landowner letters and their response.
The private landowners have been contacted so far. The initial request to the private landowners was simply to allow us access to their properties for the surveying and for some geotechnical investigation. To date, we've had positive replies from, Jessica, positive replies from about 50% of the landowners. Is that correct? Approximately 50%.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Doucette?
That was my question.
Councillor Main?
My question is fairly simple. This being an initial preliminary report, how far off of budget do you think we are? Because now you mentioned roads that have to be rebuilt, and you know what I'm trying to say? Because we all agree, no, we didn't all agree because I wasn't here, but the preliminary cost of this project came out at, was it 6? Around 6 or
Hanson,
7
do you have any
million.
comments?
Now, after the preliminary report that you did, how far over budget do you think this project will be?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the only budget that's allocated in terms of this project is the consulting costs. So I think we're at the original proposal to do the work, 240,000, something in there. I'm sorry.
Is it about 340?
340?
I believe.
Okay, but that's the budget allocation at this point in time. The preliminary estimate based on a very cursory review of the area and what had to be done was in the $7 million range. So what we'll do, once we've been through as Ian has pointed out here, once we're through the EA process and we're able to go ahead with the preliminary estimates, we'll be able to put a better number on that, and if necessary, scale that back or whatever has to be done in terms of the estimate, and then come back to council. Council hasn't made any commitment beyond that in terms of what has to be spent on the capital side. So we'll come back to council with those estimates once the EA is finished and we know where we're going in terms of municipal servicing.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Any questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one additional comment, not a question. We talked at strategic planning and the budget about shovel-ready projects and potential funding. I think we just want to point out and refresh council's memory that as we go through the CA process and have tender documents and design ready, we will then be shovel-ready on this project. And I think that's the key and one of the key indicators for council when they first took a look at this area in the project. So just as a refresher, that's sort of the goal here, is to be shovel-ready with this project.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
And we had Councillor Butters moved a motion on this item number 1. I don't believe I asked for a seconder, did I? And I call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It was carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Item number 2, this was also Councillor Butters, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Let's see. Department of Economic Development report number 2015-3, subject information report, Regional Municipality of Niagara Economic Development Action Plan. And the recommendation is that council receives this report for information, and we have presentation to enjoy from Bob Seguin, Region of Niagara, regarding Team Niagara Action Plan. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bodnar? Mr. Again, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the
Push your mic on.
Is it remote? Yes.
I'm glad to have my colleague Evan Nash, who's the Economic Development Officer of the Port Colborne, who's joined us partway through last year and has become a full member of the Team Niagara of the Economic Development Officers. And we look to Evan's cooperation and experience insights as part of that full team. I'd like to take you quickly. About a year ago, I joined the Regional Council. I joined the regional team at the region and took over this role of economic development. In March, first presentation of Regional Council focused on reinstituting a Team Niagara approach, which included all 5 economic development officers. City of Port Colborne did not have its economic development officer appointed at that time, but we knew that at some point they would, and bring them all together to work as a team, as we did several years ago. We also indicate to council, we look at 3 significant priorities: investment attraction, innovation and entrepreneurship, and partnerships. Part of that discussion involved having Brock and Niagara College at attendance, and throughout this last year, instituted new agreements with Brock, Niagara College, Innovate Niagara, which is the Regional Innovation Center located in St. Catharines, supported by the province, and Vineland Research, where the region provided financial support to take these projects across the region, not just in a unique little location, and to ensure that we had both investment opportunities identified, new businesses, and jobs. We also instituted, just not here, is a small project that we intend to expand this year, is with the District School Board of Niagara, work they're doing on innovation that we'll hope to see expanded through the Catholic School Board and the 2 French language boards, taking their graduates in the last years of high school, looking for entrepreneurship opportunities and innovation opportunities. As I said at the beginning, working with Evan and my colleagues at the local level, at Fort Erie, Niagara Falls, Welland, and St. Catharines, the 5 of them and ourselves at the region, we started developing a joint work plan that led to this Team Niagara approach. But we've also, through the help of my Chief Administrative Officer, Harry Schlang, and his colleagues, including your Chief Administrative Officer, Bob Heil, pulled all the CAOs into this discussion, and late last year came up with this joint plan. I'm glad you're on the team.
We've
There you
heard it
go.
up. Heard it up. We've had some technical difficulties.
Do we want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, can you?
We'll try.
It looked a lot better in print.
We're going to get it correct.
Everyone does have this in their agenda package.
We'll pick this up, but I believe you all have the hard copy as well. And I know Chair Caslin and Councillor Barrick also have seen it at past presentations. As the Chair mentioned, and as Councillor Barrick said, this was part of the discussion raised last December and discussed last week at Regional Council on a broader strategy for the region, on a strategic plan, including a number of points that the Chair mentioned. But one of the ones that, as Councillor Barrick said, was on an economic development side, a joint action plan that would focused on the next 4 years, this year and next 3, involving all 12 municipalities, then working with the business community across the region. The framework is based on a 2012 agreement between the CAOs across this region, and trying to highlight the splits and duties at the local level, the business retention expansion function, which is a core activity at all municipal levels, given the capacity, and at the regional level, focus on investment attraction, on entrepreneurship, economic research and analysis, and then on advocacy. And in the piece that you have, and I believe Evan can provide you the detailed plan, it's about 20-some pages, we try to highlight where those priorities would be for the next 4 years. And key activities which we work on together, but also focus where the highest priority would be. For example, on investment attraction, in the past years, there have been a number of trade missions at both the regional level and local level, not always well coordinated, sometimes at different times of the year. How do we work together, open these up to those parts of the Niagara business community that really wants to work on this mission, either incoming or outgoing? What are the opportunities? How we link the federal government's activities, the province's activities, and their own network within the region to make sure that when we go on these missions outside, or we bring people from outside into Niagara, we're bringing them into the intent of truly doing business, finding new investment, and leading towards jobs. The other pieces are how do we then expand this out to other parts of the both senior governments to inform them that this region is a job-creating region, is investment ready, and there are innovation and entrepreneurship activities happening here, and bring them to the site that how many businesses here are doing things that they may not be aware of, that would impress upon them. This is a place for them to then reinforce our investment message. The second piece, and of course part of that would be how we then link our efforts on GO to then keep on attracting new investment and new people into this region. The second piece is on economic research and analysis. The resources we would have here at the region, working with the local municipalities, will allow us to focus on certain key areas of research that we can disseminate across the region, across the municipalities, but most importantly, across the business community, the post-secondary community. In discussions with my colleagues, we have identified two key ones. One is competitiveness. Let's get a true competitiveness analysis of how well we're doing and how is comparison, the cost of business to do business in this region versus some selected regions outside. How do we compete? How do we balance? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? Have that done thoroughly, up to date, then release it back into the community. Say, here's where we need to do further work, or here's where we need to really show our strengths and build on those strengths. The second one would be a work on the cost of living. The whole issue of skill shortages that's arisen in this region, particularly in this last year, where we've got growth in some areas, maybe not as fast growth in others, and the workforce not quite evenly balanced. How do we, when we're looking for new people, how do they help the business community say, by the way, there's a number of reasons why it's good to work here, a number of things that we match up on cost, but if we're not, where not, how not, and how do we address that? Is it something that the region needs to do, the region municipalities, or the region municipalities and the business community? The other piece of economic research is how do we support the advocacy activities? And the third pillar was advocacy. There are a number of policies, both at the provincial level, federal level, indeed within the region, where the business community has not always found that they've gained the right attitude, the right capacity to grow and prosper. I know in the southern region of southern part of this region, provincially significant wetlands is an increasing issue. Provincial policy in this. How do we work together, bring our economic analysis together, and then what it means at the local level, what it really means for the local community, and bring that back to both the region and then to the province to say, how can we mitigate some of these activities? How do we manage this? How do we might find other ways of achieving the goals of the broad policy, but not having what we see as adverse effects? And we have the new Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority leadership indicates that there's an opportunity to work with them as well to bring this to case. The GO train advocacy is a first priority. We'll be working with the colleagues across the region to put the economic analysis behind the GO train analysis to help the region make sure that we can do our best efforts possible to obtain the 2015 decision on GO train to Niagara Falls. And there's several others there. And this is a 4-year plan, so we don't need to do each and every one all at once. But how do we build on the highest priorities? And once we succeed, or at least get clarity of where the decision is, and let's not fuss about this anymore if that's the clarity, then move on to the next issues and then roll through these skills issues, other issues around where we need to get either at the federal level or the provincial level some decisions to assist our business community. And then again, as I said, we look at the external side, what we have to do outside this region, and then also internally, how we can work better between the planning department, the public works at the region, and then in cooperation with Evan and his colleagues here at the municipality, for example, how do we make sure that our planning functions coordinate better to help public works functions, and of course the economic development functions work better to assist the business community here. One thing we did raise in the, sorry, thanks, sir. Oh, the other way. There you go. Wanted to raise, and this was make this very different from past plans, is not always saying that we want to do good things, but we're going to measure ourselves publicly. As your Chief Administrative Officer will recall, we had a good discussion early December on this. What are those measures? How much public do we make them? How strong do we make them? And a sense came out, need to be public, they need to be strong, may not need to be fine-tuned to the nth job, but we need to be clear that we want to see employment growth. We will measure ourselves on employment growth year by year. We want to see that the building permit growth is a proxy for investment. And what we'll do is try to improve upon that investment analysis. That building permit growth across the region is increasing. That regional population growth, that the economy of this region is increasing and improving. More people want to come and live here, work here, and spend time here. The population growth should go above the normal average, increase faster. And we want to see increases in the number of new businesses. Given the importance of innovation and entrepreneurship, we want to see more new businesses created across the region, knowing some will not succeed, some will fail, but others will succeed and create further new jobs. And then we want to continue to build the partnerships. So I've identified several. There's a number more we can do with groups outside the region, inside the region, to continually improve the opportunity of working together to improve investment and jobs and innovation in this region. So as I said, we worked with all the EDOs. We've worked with the 12 CAOs, with the help of my CEO and our colleague CEOs, got their agreement in December that this was something they could support. We brought it through to regional council, the chair's assistants and regional councils. It's been part of the strategic plan that was approved, at least in direction last week, and we'll be seeking, going forward, to seek some budgetary support to implement this plan fully. But as we're doing this, we continue to reach out to the business community, business leaders across this region, in every part of the region, and these various business and trade associations to make sure as we develop this and implement this, we're focusing on their priorities, but they also know that we have the support of council at the regional level and the councils at each municipal level. We're going to be backing this plan for the next 4 years, and they can know that we're going to be at this for 4 years. Also reporting back each year about the real results that we're achieving it. So with that, members of council, Mr. Mayor, and members of the audience, open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sagan. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. When it comes down to the results, and you said that you'd be making yearly reports, will they be in kind of like a overall umbrella, or will it be specific to municipalities when it comes to the employment growth, building permits, and the new businesses in Niagara specifically?
Well, initially we'll be looking at the regional levels, but we'll be working with my colleagues at the EDO level to see how we can break this out, and if that works for the municipal council. I just want to make sure that that works at each municipal council. For those communities who do not have an economic development officer, we'll be meeting with the chief administrative officer to see how that works out. I suspect for some there'll be some pretty strong growth, and others it won't be as much. Hopefully we'll be working each year to improve performance across the board. But at first, we'll be looking at the regional level.
Thank you.
Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. You said that you're also meeting with already existing businesses to get information from them as to how much your plan can aid them or assist them. And also, that's one question, I'll maybe let you answer that one first. How often are you meeting with them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, my colleague, Evan Asher, will be meeting with them on a very regular basis. I meet with various parts of the business community on a regular enough basis, with chambers across this region, with the Niagara Industrial Association, which I'm on the board, Innovate Niagara, which I'm on the board as a regional representation, and then individual businesses where I have a chance to actually go to their plant facility, to actually walk the floor, meet, talk to them about their issues at their site of operation. So I won't say it's daily, and I won't say it's weekly. It's a mix of both. But between all of us and the chief administrative officers of the other communities, we're getting a fairly good handle on their priorities, but we always do better. We can always do better.
Right. Then my second question is, you said there are ways to attract new businesses to our area. Right now, both the region and I know our municipality, I believe other municipalities have dropped developmental charges. So when you have a business inquiry about coming into the area, all those things of having no development charges are great, but do they have land ready for, like we're always talking about Grow South, Niagara, is there land ready for those businesses to come here?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Service lands, I should say.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillors. Service lands, no, we're not equally distributed. Some parts of the Niagara region have more service land and industrial parks than others. Others are up against their boundaries, others are up against provincial policies and Greenbelt, Niagara Escarpment. So it's a mix. We're trying to work with, this is why one of the policies we want to look at is provincially significant wetlands, which takes out of industrial pool, the industrial zoning pool, certain lands. So how can we either match up with other lands and bring them into industrial zoning use, if that's where the municipality wants it, or find some way to free them up in a way that's still consistent with provincial policy. So there's a real challenge. The other piece is that, and in the text of the report, you'll see it identified, with our new focus on an expediter, Adam June from Fort Erie, not only trying to work and planning development, others within the region to focus on where business is being stalled or stymied in some ways on an individual basis, rectified, but also look at some systemic challenges. And one is we have investment incentives, tax incentives here in the Gateway area, which includes Port Colborne. How do we market them? So we're raised with the CAO and the senior management team at the region. Here's a proposal, here's a plan. We'll be bringing that forward to say, how can we market this first within the region, outside the region, and then how do we market it such that we're competitive with other jurisdictions? But it's a small part of the total package, and the service land is a critical piece of it. But it's going to be a long-term process to solve that last part, the service land.
Any questions, further questions? Councillors to my right? Councillors to my left? There being none, thank you, Mr. Sagan. Hold on, is there any questions of staff?
Yeah, I have my heckling sector down here, and they're very good.
I'd like to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you again, Mr. Sagan.
Thank you.
The next item is item number 7.
Shut the microphone off. Evan.
Evan, the mic, please.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I got
Councillor Demers, did you move item number 7? That was you again? Councillor Butters, you're a busy girl tonight. Can you please proceed?
So, I'll just pick on them. Okay, I know. It's usually Councillor Elliott slacking tonight. Let's see, item number 7.
Proceed, Councillor Butters.
Department of Planning and Development Report number 2015-11, subject recommendation report, amendment to development charge bylaw 6131-97-14, 2-year waiving of charges for commercial, institutional, and industrial uses. The recommendation that, number 1, that council hereby determines that no further public meeting is required under section 12 (3) of the Development Charges Act prior to adoption of the attached bylaw. 2, that the amendment to the Development Charges bylaw attached as Appendix C, waiving development charges for all institutional, commercial, and industrial development for 2 years, backdated to September 9th, 2014, is hereby approved. 3, that staff be directed to prepare the notice of passing as per the Development Charges Act.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Doucette? Who has carried this, Mr. Aquilini? Do you?
Barb first, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Barb, Councillor.
Thank you. The reason I lifted this, we had this come back to us because there was a council direction to grandfather in a business that developed commercially on Steele Street. And then we find with this report that we're being told we're unable to do that because it would be illegal to do that. And it would be bonusing to do that. And I guess I have to express a disappointment that the individual that came to us last April requesting, you know, for not to be paying development charges, blah, blah, blah. The council of the day, you know, takes a kind of a shift in direction. By September, then we're looking at waiving other development charges. Then we include commercial, and because his letter was and request was back in April, which was 4 months before the September date, now he's excluded from being able to benefit from this change. And I just don't think it's fair. And I know what the rules are, and you're not supposed to break the law, and I get all that. But it really is disappointing that somehow his original letter in April and his request, and even though it was dealt with and the way development charges were then, somehow that letter could not have been carried through, or that individual couldn't have been contacted to say, listen, if you still are looking for relief from that, the development charge, you know, maybe you want to think about putting in another letter in the public meetings that happened, you know, after September. But that didn't happen. And quite frankly, I didn't know that he would have to do that. I sort of thought he put the letter in April. His request certainly wouldn't have changed. You know, during that fall process, it was raised, you know, that this person had started that development, and that, you know, we should be looking at giving that person that same break as anybody new. I don't know that there's anything we can do about it at this point, but I think that when we go forward, at least from here, there needs to be some way of flagging stuff, especially if within months, like 4 months, talk about bad timing. It's just, I don't know. I just wish that there was something that we could do. Thank you.
Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually agree with Councillor Butters, because as council will recall, we hired Watson and Associates, and they took on a study starting in April. April is when they took on the study to update our development charges. It took them from April 2014, and it was finalized in August. So during that time, we knew that we were going to be considering that. We didn't necessarily that we were considering commercial, but we were considering the waiving of development charges. And Mr. Matheson actually never even obtained a building permit until June 2014. And that time he paid $6,800 to us and $57,000 to the region. $57,000 to the region on a corner that's already serviced. It's already serviced, Your Worship. It has water and sewer down. We did the whole Kalali Street, put all new water lines, sewer lines in there. They were all in there already. We did them all. All he had to do was the payment to hook up. So I have a little bit of a problem with it too. I certainly don't consider it bonusing. We knew he was developing that corner. That corner lay barren for I don't know how many years. And I just feel just as badly as Councillor Butters. And through you to the CAO, I would like to know if this was granted. Is that, I know our planner says it's considered as bonusing, but legally, would we be in for a legal hassle from somebody else for that? Thank you, I guess. Thank you.
Mr. Isle?
Through your worship, I would love to be able to answer that question, but it involves more legal advice perhaps than what's in this report. And your worship, for me to go on further, I would probably recommend that you go in camera for a brief session for a little more advice on it. It's on the agenda, it's proper, and it's permitted to go in camera, and I can give you a little bit more information that, that I think would be improper to provide to you in public.
Okay.
Perhaps before we go in camera, I might solicit any other questions of council. Other members of council? Yes, Councillor?
Just real quick, through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Aquilina, I guess the backdating date that we're limited to is the completion date of the report, the development charge report, not the date that it started.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, that's correct. We could only go back to the date that council passed the bylaw, the Development Charges Act. As was indicated earlier, this was not studied because the council direction was back in April to not grant this property of being exempt. So the consultant took that information and continued forward on the development charges study.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Follow up, Councillor Elliott? Oh, we have Councillor Damaris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say I misunderstood what was going on back when Mr. Matheson came to us then, because at that meeting, my understanding was we basically asked him to stand down on it. We took no action on it because we knew we were going to be tackling development charges, and we led him to believe that there would be some way we could work with him on it. And actually we referred him to speak with staff and to work on it. And so I was under the understanding that we were going to be able to help him, and clearly we haven't.
At this point, I would ask council we move in camera, just to discuss this further legal position on this. I have a mover. Moved by Councillor Butters, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
This would be specifically in respect of legal advice, and the minutes will show in respect of legal advice.
To go in camera for legal advice. Legal advice extends to the CAO.
Your Worship, to answer that, the legal advice that I'll be providing is in respect of information that I have available to me from counsel. Legal counsel.
All those in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest arising out of our discussions from in camera? There being none, we'll resume our meeting. Any more comments on item number 7? There being none, I'd call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Butters in opposition. Thank you. Item number 8. Mr. Main.
Okay. The Department of Planning and Development report number 2015-16, subject, parking traffic on Steele Street. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne approve the following. The Schedule C parking prohibitions to bylaw 89-2000 as amended be further amended by deleting therefrom the following. Steele Street West, 56 meters south of Steele Street, to 27.6 meters south of Steele Street at any time. That the Schedule C parking prohibitions bylaw 89-2000 as amended be further amended by adding therefore the following. Steele Street West, 56 meters south of Steele Street, south end of Steele Street, anytime. That Schedule A to the bylaw 5082/117/07 being a bylaw to designate certain private roadways as fire routes and to ensure adequate access thereon as amended, be further amended by adding therefore thereto the following. Site location Northland Point, number 2 Fielden Avenue. Plan Schedule B-8, that the provisions of the bylaw shall take effect on the passing subject to the display of official signs.
Seconder for that motion? Seconder, Councillor Rudders. Discussion?
Through you,
Councillor
Mr.
May.
Mayor. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Through you,
Councillor.
Mr. Mayor. Parking seems to be an issue. I've been on the council now for just a shade over 2 months, and I would say 75% of my complaints or inquiries about parking. I agree totally that the south end of Steele Street is not meant for 3 lanes of traffic, counting the parking lane, especially in the wintertime. It's not only hazardous, it's almost impossible to get down when it's snowing or when there's a plow down there or when the people are parked not close enough to the curb. Having said that, the Niagara Health System has kind of created this problem, and we let them get away with it. And I don't know what we can do to rectify it, but I've been down there a couple of times in the last couple of weeks and have taken pictures. On the south end of Steele Street, there's anywhere at any given time of the day 12 to 15 cars. In the parking lot behind urgent care on any given day, I've got pictures twice I took with just 3 cars in the whole parking lot, and 2 of them were doctors. The front parking lot has 6 spaces and 1 car. Now the front of the hospital, where the diagonal parking is, full, right to one end to the other end. And across the street, because we've created the problem over there by making it permit only, 1 car. Now when we eliminate the parking on South Steele Street, those 12 to 15 cars at any given time, where do they go? Where the health system has let us down is this is an urgent care center. And if a person has to park 2 blocks away, he doesn't need to go to the urgent care center because he's healthy enough already. It's just, I can understand why it has to be done for the fire lane, but I just don't know what we're going to do with the other 15 cars. We have to be careful how we handle this, because everything we do has a reaction, whether it's negative or whether it's positive. I had a fellow call me up who lives on West Street, and I think between Charlotte and Kent, I think. Well, it doesn't matter, in that area. He said, I have 2 cars, space for 1 in my driveway. How come I can't get a permit to park in front of my house? So it just starts at NHS, it gets pushed onto the city, it gets pushed out into the neighborhood, and then sooner or later, when you try to rectify the initial problem or the problem that you have pending, it creates another problem. That's just a comment I had to make, and I had to get it off my chest. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Are we doing this by ourselves to rectify a possible problem, or has there been a request by the neighborhood or by NHS for us to do this? Just being curious, through you to
Mr. Aquilina.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Doucette. This is a request from Mr. Hanson, Director of Operations and Engineering, and information that's coming from the fire department as well.
Okay.
Councillor Elliott and Councillor Wagner.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'll support it, the no parking. First of all, the NHS created the monster in itself. They've created it at every hospital, every site that you have to go into. For medical treatment, you got to pay to get in and out of now. They just built a new medical facility up on Prince Charles Drive in Welland that's got plenty of parking, but you got to pay to get in and out. We do not have to provide parking for the Niagara Health System. That's not on us. If we take away 12 or 15 spaces, Councillor Main said there's more than 12 or 15 spaces in that parking lot. The only reason people park on the street is so that they can avoid paying. If you're in St. Catharines or Welland had the same issue. They've got a paid parking lot. You have to pay to go into the hospital or walk, either one. It's not incumbent upon us to provide parking for the NHS. I think the reason why we give the permit on street parking on Sugarloaf in front of those houses was because of this, because people were avoiding going into the parking lots and paying, and they were parking all day long, staff was, in front of these houses on Sugarloaf, And these people couldn't even park to get into their own houses. That was the reason why we took away the parking on street and gave it by permit. This is the same thing. I would hazard a guess and say some of these people that park on south end of Steele are probably employees that don't want to pay to park, are there all day long. It impedes the snowplow, it impedes the fire department. We can't have it. It's like Councillor Kenny brought up, you know, when somebody goes in to volunteer to work in the hospital, they have to pay to go into park. And I kind of made an offhand comment that said, well, why doesn't the NHS give their volunteers free parking? If they want them to come and work for nothing, let them park for nothing in their parking lot. But this isn't on us to provide parking for the hospital. This is upon the NHS to provide parking for their facilities. If it's unsafe to have those cars parked in those positions, the fire department has said so, engineering said it's unsafe and the parking's got to go. They've got a parking lot that's underutilized. We've got a parking lot in H.H. Knoll that isn't too far away that is free parking if people want to park. Yeah, it's a little bit of a walk, but at least it's free and you're off the street. So while I understand people want to park as close as possible, there is alternatives. And if you got to pay to park at the NHS, you have to pay to park at the NHS. The new hospital in St. Catharines. It's been in the paper, I don't know if you've read it. They've got a fiasco going on. It's the only parking that there is available is paid. So if you got to pay in other places, you're going to have to start to pay here because of a safety reason, and I will fully support this.
Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a little history lesson, and I'm sure I got it right because I sat in that chair when this happened. The NHS did not want to implement paid parking, so let's blame who we're supposed to blame, which was the Ministry of Health, that said before you want any money, you have to max out your revenue, and part of that maxing out was to charge for parking lots. So I think if they had their druthers, they wouldn't want to pay, right? That just makes sense. But just to put that on there, we're proposing this year-round ban on parking, right? Certainly, the snowplows wouldn't have a problem in the summer. So can I ask, I see Mike Bendia is here from the fire department, is it a problem with that parking even for fire fighting in the summertime? And if it isn't, can we not ban this parking from a date to a date, leave it there for the summer? But I don't know that it didn't spur some fire department comments on year-round rather than just winter. So I'd just like to know that before I would bring forward something that we only ban this in the wintertime. So.
Mr. Aquilini, you can respond to that?
Sure. Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bonner, I know Mike Benya is here on behalf of the fire department. I had that same question, and I'm advised that they have difficulty getting down to Northland Point for an emergency. If cars are parked along the side of the road, fire department has difficulty getting down through there. Okay. I want to speak for Mike himself or the fire department, but that was the comments that we received through the report.
Mr. Bendia, do you have any comment? You're content with our response? Sure.
Anywhere, even at the table. Right, just sit right there. Stand there. There you are. You're off.
The issues, through you, Mr. Mayor, the issues that we addressed were for the fire access route for Northland Point. Apparently, we learned a lot when we started delving into this with bylaw enforcement and operational services, because I always believed, and we were led to believe when they built Northland Point, that the south road in behind was going to be a city street at one time, based on projections for paving the back parking lot and rejuvenating that whole back area. That has never come to be, so that is a fire access route. And it only goes to, I guess, the ends of the wings of Northland Point is where the private road ends and the actual city street begins. Now, for our purposes, our concern is the fire access route. We need to have that designated by bylaw so that we can control parking on those bends better. If you were to decide to deal with parking on Steele Street, that's entirely up to you. I mean, we can get through to the point, but when we got past the actual street onto the private laneway is where we had a problem in December, because they had plowed, the snow was plowed against the west side of the street. The cars were parked out there, and the ladder truck could not make the bend to get around, had to back out and go around, come down Field and Avenue. So that's what our concern is, the fire access route from the fire department perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Bendia. Any other questions? Councillor Botter, you are finished.
Thank you very much. Can we bring up page 143 of that report that shows the red line, no parking, and the yellow line, which the yellow line, I believe, is what Mike's talking about for a fire route? Because if that's the case, and I think I'm hearing that there isn't a big concern from the fire department on the red line area. Mike, do you have something in front of you that you can?
I have my report.
We're trying to get it up, out of memory.
We're going to have to increase memory.
I don't know why.
You're referring to Schedule D8 plan?
I'm looking at page 143 on mine that shows an overhead view, and it shows the yellow fire route around Northland Point, and then it shows a red line on Steel Street that has a little caption that says no parking.
Right, okay.
So is the red line, if people are parked there, a problem for the fire department?
The time that we responded in December, no. It was narrow, but we could get through. But I know there was, when we were leaving, there was a plow coming that could not get through.
So further to that question, have you ever had a problem in the summertime with cars parked there with you getting through?
On the bend, if it's something going on at the hospital, there has been occasions when, like, our concern is the yellow area,
right, primarily
because if they park on that bend, they take a lot of the roadway away.
And I'm just talking about the red line, because that's what we're going to ban right now.
I have not documented any problems with that.
Okay, then I'll wait to hear from staff before I go through.
Mr. Hanson, you have a comment on this issue?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. The red line shown on Appendix A, that's an open improved roadway down to where we have what is called a designated fire lane. The open improved roadway is 7.5 meters wide. That's enough room for 2 vehicles on it's a designated 2-direction roadway. We can't have parking within there and then have a single lane on a 2-way roadway. It's a liability. We've had cases, now I know the instance which is mentioned in the report of a plow operator almost hitting a person getting out of a vehicle. Same thing applies in the summer. If you have 2-way traffic on a roadway where there's only a single lane available, there's a potential for liability there for somebody to get hit, either getting out of a vehicle or 2 vehicles in opposite directions colliding. So it's a concern for the area shown as red on there as well.
Councillor Bonder, you're content?
One more kick at the can, sir. So the red line that we're looking at there, is that no parking right now? No. Okay. All right. I'll wait to hear for any comments from anybody else.
Councillor Aquilina? Councillor. Director Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to, through you to Councillor Bonner, presently right now, 15 meters south of Al Robbins' property, that's where you can park. Well, it will change because it will be starting right from his driveway, everything south.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Presently, there are 2 spots on from Mr. Robbins' driveway, from his south of his driveway, because he requested that, and we put up no parking, and no one parks there. Because that was approved a while ago. He came to me one day when I was getting in my vehicle and said, could I just have 1 parking spot where, so I can see to get out? And Sherry said, well, we'll give him 2. So we ended up giving him 2. to put no parking all on that street is to me wrong. I agree with Councillor Bodner. If we do that only in the winter, there's lots of space in the summer. I worked there over almost 30 years now, and I've never had a problem. I pay to park. I pay my money. It comes off my pay, so I don't care. But some people do not want to pay. It's $500 a year to work, that you pay to work, so you can park there, and there's no parking anywhere. Now, especially now that there's permit parking in Sugarloaf, which I hope at some point in time we address. Park, every staff member that works at the drug rehab and eating, they park there. They park. They take up that whole, all those parking spots along our park. That's where they all park. And some of actually Northland Point employees park there as well. So there is no parking there to walk through the back door to the hospital. And these 12 spots or 10 spots, whatever are there, they need to stay. If you're leaving the ones right at the very end, you're leaving those ones, the ones from Sugarloaf to Mr. Robbins' driveway to the north, those ones, thank God, you've left those. That's only probably 4 spots, but I don't agree with taking the spots away. In the winter, I would say okay, but not necessary.
Further comments? Councillor May? Just a quick one. I'm not against putting no parking in that street. I've driven it many times. I've almost clipped people's doors off when they're getting in and out because there's not enough room to get around them, number one. But what my concern is, where do you put those 15 cars? If you put them over on Sugarloaf Street, well, guess what? Sugarloaf Street, west of Steele, those people are going to say, how come I can't get a parking permit because everybody's parked in front of my house? And before you know it, you got parking permits all over, and you still have the same problem. You still have the same issue. Maybe where they at the park, you could put 2-hour signs up. I don't know. Get those people moving. That might discourage the. You might free up some that way, but I think you really have to look at this. I don't think we should have parking in that section because it is so narrow. It is an accident waiting to happen, and someone could get hurt, especially in the wintertime. So I think we really seriously have to look at that 15 cars and where do we move them. In Welland, they move them over to the arena or the curling club. People don't want to park, but then you're walking, as a visitor, you're walking quite a distance to get to the hospital. Mm-hmm. And this is an urgent care center, and those people who need help urgently, if they have to park 2 blocks away, forget it. They're healthy enough, they shouldn't go to the, like I said before, they shouldn't be going to urgent care. Thank you.
Any further questions or comment? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, we're basing parking on people going to the hospital. We don't have to provide parking for the hospital. There's parking there. Councillor Main said he's taken pictures of an empty parking lot. So it's not like it's overflow parking where there's a crush of cars and there's nowhere to park. I think at times, and I don't want to speak out of school, but that stoned area out the back where everybody parks their trailers for fishing doesn't usually seem to have a lot of people there when there's no boats around. And I don't want to tell people to park in an area where they really shouldn't, but I think that stoned area south of the hospital is probably safer than this. We've got our engineer telling us that you're not supposed to have cars parked on a roadway where there's only enough room for 2 cars to go through, and yet we're going to completely ignore that and say, we ought to let them park there because we don't want them to pay parking at the hospital. That's not our problem. We're supposed to make our roadways safe for our citizens to travel up and down. And we're trying to make it so that people can avoid paying for parking at a hospital. That's not our problem that they put parking in or paid parking in. But the engineer says, get them off the roadway to make it a safe place to travel. I can't argue with that. I know that Councillor Bodner said that it was the Ministry of Health that forced them into the paid parking. It's a fact of life everywhere now. Everywhere you go, you have to pay to park. It's unfortunate, but I would rather have my roadways safe remove the liability after it's been set here, and those 12 or 10 cars that parked there, that parking lot sits empty. Every time I've been into that hospital, there's only been maybe 2 cars, and it can accommodate every single one of those cars that's parked on the street. So if it was an issue where there was absolutely no parking around the hospital, you know what, maybe we could help them out a little bit, but like I say, I'd rather have a safe roadway than have to face something with liability.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. At this time, I'm going to, Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to weigh in on this because I have some real concerns that I do understand that we are not here to provide parking for the NHS. I get that. But we should be able to allow parking for those who maybe can't afford the NHS. It's a great burden on some people to pay even a parking spot. And, you know, many times they even have to get people to drive them to their appointments and such. It's hard to do. I mean, we were willing to get rid of parking meters so that we could provide free parking for the businesses on Clarence Street. I think we should be thinking more about providing some parking for our average everyday people who have to come in and out of appointments. That's all. I do agree, though, with the fire department and the restrictions for that. I totally understand that. In that case, I say, yeah, all right, there should be no parking. But remember, when we're planning these things, we need to stop and think about those people who need to use these services, are citizens of Port Colborne, and maybe don't have the ability to continue to pay these things. Think about that.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to call the question. I think we've chatted enough about this. I think it's time that we put it to bed, but Councillor Wagner.
Just a comment. Can you call the question, sir?
Yeah, point of order.
Or does the councillor have to call the question?
I think I call the question. Correct me, Mr. Clerk? Mr. CAO?
Your Worship, you can call the question. Someone can arise to a point of order and challenge that.
Is there
any
more,
member of council can...
Is there more discussion needed on this issue? Councillor Wagner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hanson, if you look at that overview again with that red line for no parking, if you go down about halfway on that red line, you see the center line of Steel Street, and the red line stays off to the side, and then it kind of joins that center line. It's about halfway down to the yellow line. I can see where that gets kind of congested, but is there any way to, if council had the mind, to leave maybe, and I have no idea how many parking spots from the top of the red line to the bottom of the no parking, would that be 3 or 4 maybe? Is there a way to leave the top of that red line with parking and put no parking further down on that red line, at least to gain a few spots?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. The red line starts at the current parking restriction that council passed last year, which is south of, no? Okay, I'm being corrected just a second.
Look at
The
138, it tells what the current direction is.
Well,
No parking 50 meters.
south of the driveway. Yeah.
That's where it starts.
South of the driveway is 7.5 meters in width. That's where it's only 2 lanes wide. We have vehicles parking. There's no restriction now. Vehicles parking on the 7.5 meter width of roadway from south of the driveway to where the yellow line shows. That leaves only 4 meters to 4.5 meters for 2-lane traffic on that roadway. If you look north of the red line, there is parking on the west side of Steel Street. The paved portion of the road north of that point is wider. And there's sufficient room north of the red line for 2 lanes of traffic and 1 parking lane. But that narrows down, as you get to the Robbins driveway, that narrows down to 7.5 meters which only allows for 2 lanes of traffic and no parking. We've also included in our comments an estimate of what it would cost to actually widen that roadway out to create a parking lane along there. So it'd be in the range of about $50,000 to add 3 meters along that roadway. And that's the intent of putting that price in there. Hopefully that answers it.
Any other comments of council? Are you ready for the question? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're getting down near the bottom of the agenda. As pointed out by our CAO, we have to set some dates for the strategic plan hearings, continuation, budget meetings, and storm sewer meetings. Is it drainage in addition to that, or drainage?
Your worship, would be storm sewers, and we'd incorporate drainage in that. Okay. Storm water in total.
There are 3 different subjects. We have meetings scheduled for Monday, February 9th, Monday, February 23rd, Monday, March 9th, certainly Monday, March 23rd. Do you wish to
16th. Yes.
Do you wish to start earlier or later on any of those dates, or do you want to pick a Saturday, or what was the council's preference? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Hanson. You had said for the storm was going to be how long of a presentation? You figured?
Mr. Mayor, it's hard to put a time on it. We're going to introduce the topic. We have our master plan study, which we distributed during budget. We'd like everybody to review that, and then we'll do a quick presentation on the recommendations in there, and then the discussion will be financing, priorities for specific areas, and how we want to move forward on that. So that debate could go anywhere from an hour to several hours, depending on how that debate goes.
I like that broad reason.
Any further comments? I'm trying to set a meeting date for those three subject matters. So the question, would you want a meeting before that or after that?
The week before for budget? What are you talking about?
Doesn't, any of those subjects. We're trying to squeeze in three meetings on those subject areas. February 2nd?
Can you be ready?
Budget?
Storm. Or budget. Budget?
Budget's ready to go.
But we want to have the drainage meeting before the budget meeting. So do you want to do? Well, we're looking at February 2nd. We'll do the drainage on February 2nd?
What day is really bad for you, Frank?
I'm not here on the 9th, so.
That's a council meeting.
So can we have drainage on the 2nd?
Yeah, Councillor Doucette said he's not here.
What about the 3rd?
What about the 3rd?
Tuesday the 3rd of February?
Depending on what time you start, I'm good.
What gives pancakes?
We wouldn't interrupt your breakfast.
Your pancakes in the morning, what else are you doing?
Did you say, how about 4 o'clock?
I've got another meeting at 5.
Well, as a question of which meetings take priority, this is the difficulty. We've got 9 people here that.
May have to prioritize, and yeah, that's possible. You wanted my choices.
We can do the 3rd and let them pick the meeting that has priority.
3rd at 4 o'clock? Okay, for the drainage meeting. Okay.
Work for you, Ron? Pardon?
Staff, does that work for you?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
If everybody says that's the date, we'll send you the invites and.
I don't believe I can do it, I don't think Frank can do it. Anybody else?
I gotta do the electronic thing there. Okay. Because if you go at 5:30 and I get to work by 5 to 10, I can do my electronic thing. I have to do that electronic thing, that thing called my job.
So we're suggesting perhaps the second at 5:30? Would that work with you, Councillor Bodnar?
No good for both.
The second, no, it's the third we were talking about.
All right, Tuesday the 3rd.
I'll work it out on the 3rd. Go Wednesday.
3rd at 5:30?
We can do the fourth, I don't care. I'll just stay here all day on the fourth, that's all.
All right.
That whole week is, fourth, I'm in Toronto.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, can you send a couple of dates out? If somebody doesn't make it, somebody doesn't make it. I mean.
All right, we'll leave it up to the clerk's office to,
We'll do that.
okay, rather than, we'll let the clerk's office try to arrange something convenient for you all.
So the storm sewer on the 2nd or the 3rd, beginning at 5:30, if that works, be the 3rd, we'll send it out. Right now, it'll be the 3rd of February at 5:30. We'll meet and it'll be on storm and drainage.
Okay, so you'll send out an invite?
We're gonna send an invite for that. Ron, can you be ready?
Could we do urban storm only? Not talking about rural drainage.
No, unless it comes up, but we're gonna try to deal with the urban drainage. Yes, that's the primary. Can you be ready by then?
Yes, we're ready.
All right, we're on.
Budget meeting.
And Ron.
Hmm? Date for the budget meeting?
Any days other than the week of the 16th, I'm not here that week.
That's one meeting.
The 10th?
Yeah.
We'll do the 11th.
11th?
I'm not available any Wednesday.
My feet are in the sand.
I can't go on
Okay.
Wednesday. but-
All right, let's,
That's okay, we'll do budget, we'll just keep out all your wishes.
We've done that.
all right, let's leave it up to the clerk's office to try to arrange something that's mutually convenient for everyone.
Does a Thursday work? Does a Thursday not work?
It's okay with me.
Thursday's fine with me.
Councillor Bodnar, how's Thursdays?
Pick which Thursday.
The 12th?
Morning.
The 12th?
That's Annette Molinar's retirement.
That's also property standards.
And Lincoln's birthday.
Yeah, Carson.
Yeah, that's
in the morning.
Well, we can go into the week of the 16th, but,
Can't be budget.
Yeah.
Mr. Sinnes is away, he's already made commitments that I've approved.
well,
He won't be happy what I do with his budget.
what about we can do the strategic plan the week of the 17th? Yes, Councillor Doucette.
I don't know if everyone agrees or disagrees, but it appears, looking at my schedule, and I don't know if everyone else's schedule is the same, is let's take a look at a Friday night. I mean, I hate to do it, but I mean, I'm available every Friday night. On Friday night.
I don't think Friday night's very popular.
I don't think so.
Your Worship, Mr. Mayor, we'll try
Yes.
and poll members of council to find some dates. I'll work it with the directors. We will poll council, and if you make it,
Let's be fair to scouts.
okay, but if you don't make it, well, that's okay too. What are you gonna do?
All right,
We're not gonna get everybody in.
moving on. Are there any notices of motion? Are we at the end of the road?
We're at the end of the road.
Agenda item number 15, our motion to adjourn. Councillor Danch. Seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Carried. We're adjourned. Now, I'd like to move on to the regular council meeting. Call meeting to the order. Are there introduction of any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
None this evening, thank you. A motion to confirm the agenda, moved by Councillor Butters, seconded by Councillor Demaray. All those in favor? Carried. Any disclosures of interest? There being none, move to the adoption of minutes. The minutes of the first meeting special of the council of January 12th, 2015. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Adoption of minutes of the second meeting regular of council on January 12th, 2015. Motion to approve those?
You move a second on the first one too, Your Worship.
Okay.
You're too quick for me.
A mover and a seconder, please, for item number 4A. I'll go back. All those in favor? Carried. 4B.
Who were they?
Barb Butters and Councillor Kenny.
Okay.
And the next one is Councillor Doucette and Councillor Bodnar. All those in favor? Carried.
We talk about them as a block next time.
Do we have any consideration of any items requiring separate discussion? There being none, move for their adoption in block. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kenny did, and Councillor Doucette seconded. All those in favor? Carried. We have two proclamations. I give the first proclamation. We're going to be needing a mover and a seconder. Where there is a moved by Councillor Doucette, seconded by Councillor Danch. Whereas there's an urgent need to raise awareness of homelessness and understanding about the causes and effects that it has on many residents in our community and across Canada. And whereas raising the roof is active in the coordination, collaboration, and advocacy to the homeless and those at risk through communication, public awareness, and education. And whereas Raising the Roof and its local affiliated agency, Port Cares, hold their National Public Awareness Day on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2015, with a commitment to work together in support of solutions to homelessness through the TOOC fundraising campaign. Now therefore, I, Mayor John Maloney, proclaim Tuesday, February 3rd, 2015 as TOOC Tuesday in the City of Port Colborne in support of their efforts to prevent and reduce homelessness. This winter, let's see how far a TOOC can go in ending homelessness. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. The second proclamation, moved by Councillor B. Kenny, seconded by Councillor John Main. Whereas Wednesday, February 11th, 2015 is recognized as Doctors with a Heart Day. And whereas following this long-established annual tradition, Dr. David Solanke and Associates of Chiropractic Associates of Port Colborne will examine and treat all members of the local council at no charge on Wednesday, February 17th, 2015. And whereas Dr. Solanke and his staff will waive all treatment fees this day, and in lieu of charging any patient fees, will invite members of the community to bring in donations for the Port Colborne Welland District Humane Society. The Humane Society provides shelter and emergency services to animals in crisis that have been victims of abuse and neglect. Now therefore, I, Mayor John Maloney, proclaim Wednesday, February 11th, 2015 as Doctors with a Heart Day in the City of Port Colborne. Can we call the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have a number of bylaws.
You want to do minutes of boards?
Oh, we missed that. Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees.
Do them in block?
Number A, number B, minutes of the Port Colborne Library, minutes of the Heritage in block. Can we move acceptance of these minutes? So moved by Councillor Butter, seconded by Councillor Main. All those in favor? If any, carried. Any notices of motion? There being none, introduction and consideration of passage of bylaws and bylaws for 3 readings. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 61800615 being a bylaw to confirm councillor representation on various boards and committees. Bylaw 61810715 being a bylaw to authorize the renewal of a contract agreement with Tidy Man Maintenance for janitorial services. Bylaw 61820815 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 61319714 being a bylaw to impose development charges. Bylaw 61830915 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 89-2000 being a bylaw regulating traffic and parking on city roads, that being Steele Street. Bylaw 61841015 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 5062-11707 being a bylaw to designate certain private roadways as fire routes and to ensure adequate access thereon. And finally, bylaw 61851115 being a bylaw to establish a schedule of rates and fees for engineering and operation services for 2015 and to repeal bylaw 61770315.
I believe we have to go in camera on these.
We have to vote on.
All right, I call the question. All those in favor? Yes. Mover and seconder, Councillor Danch, seconded by Councillor Butters. Are we ready then for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Now, I'd ask that we go into camera just very briefly. A motion for that? Yes. Yep. Madam Clerk. You want the confirmatory bylaw first? Would someone move the confirmatory bylaw? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaw be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 61861215 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of January 26, 2015.
All those in favor? I have to move it and second it. Councillor Danch, Councillor Kenny. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Now we can go in camera. We have a motion to go in camera. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Main. Seconded. All those in favor? That council do now proceed in camera in order to address the following matters. Items A, 2, sub 2, 3, and 4. Any questions on your agenda? Councillor Bodnar.
I think you have to say why we're buying it.
It's a matter of, it's item A, Councillor Bodnar, dealing with our appointments to boards and committees. Okay.
Personnel matters.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Can we just go in camera just briefly?